The transfer window continues to rumble on, so today we're looking at each Premier League club's biggest transfer rumour from the last 7 days. We're going to go in reverse order from W up to A, like we did last week, and we're starting with Wolves, who have been somehow linked with James Rodriguez. Now, is it just me that doesn't understand this at all? What is this move? This is not the James Rodriguez of old. This is 33-year-old James Rodriguez coming off of a ripped-up contract at Sao Paulo with previous moves to Al Rayyan and Olympiacos. I mean, think of that Wolves system. Mario Lemina in there. Gomez in there, Mateus Cunha playing off of a central striker that's likely to be a big physical presence in Larson. It is dynamic, it is strong, it is physical, presses hard in that Gary O'Neill system. Even players that are maybe slightly less physical are very aggressive, players like Pedro Neto, Hwang. Where's James playing? For me, this is just nope. West Ham, we could have had a couple of moves. Nicholas Füllkrug looks like it's progressing slowly, and I'm quite intrigued by that move. It feels more of a David Moyes style striker than the progressive options we've seen them linked with over the last few weeks. Players like John Duran, younger profile of striker, moving to Nicholas Füllkrug. Feels a little bit more short term. But the player we're going to focus on with West Ham is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. 26 years old and entering the final year of his contract, which is absolutely crucial to this deal because, of course, he is effectively having to be sold by Manchester United. Interestingly, he splits opinion. In fact, I don't even know whether he really splits opinion. Some of the narratives I've seen online this week about Wan-Bissaka have been that this is a disastrous sale by United. And I think the reason for that is his 1v1 defending in big high-profile moments is very visibly good. You know, it's hard to beat Wan-Bissaka on the outside. You think of the FA Cup final, for instance, when he went 1v1 against Jeremy Doku when he came on in the second half. It was an absolute battle, a slugfest that Wan-Bissaka kind of came out on top of. And those big moments, I think what Manchester United fans are thinking, we could miss this. But I'm going to counter that a little bit. I'm not sure Wan-Bissaka has ever hit the heights United hoped he would when they paid that £50 million fee. These starting numbers, not quite as impressive as I thought they would be. Certainly believe that Diogo Dalot is the outstanding right-back option of the two. His attacking contribution remains quite limited. His on-the-ball contribution is definitely the area he struggles the most with, particularly when he's being asked to invert into the midfield like you sometimes see Diogo Dalot do. So I think for United to go to the next level, does Aaron Wan-Bissaka have a future in a team that is ball dominant, which United are trying to be? I'm not totally convinced. However, I do believe this is a really good move for West Ham, who are not necessarily the most ball-dominant team, who are going to face a lot more traffic, and who have a 31-year-old right-back who played 3,000 minutes in Vladimir Kufal. When you take into account Ben Johnson also leaving on a free transfer and some of Aaron Wan-Bissaka's defensive numbers, which are still outstanding, I think you get a really settled, structured right back that can play in a back four, offer you great defensive stability. He's a good age, he's homegrown. There are a lot of positives for West Ham, but for United, with 1 year left on his contract, I honestly don't think it's the worst sale. Let's go to Chiesa, shall we? We've spoken about him a couple of times throughout this summer. This time he's being linked with a move to Tottenham. Now, these reports seem to stem from Italy. Less reliable, I would suggest, and I can't actually see this one happening. Still only 26 years old, Chiesa, and entering the final year of his contract, of course, Juventus supposedly want sub 25 million euros for him, which on the surface of it, if you think of classic Chiesa, feels like a great fee, doesn't it? But Chiesa coming off the back of that really serious injury. Chiesa coming off the back of a pretty mediocre season. Not as bad as some people have made out, but certainly not the levels we've seen from him in the past. Playing in a system that didn't really suit him, that 3-5-2 under Max Allegri, he struggled. Despite those struggles, he was still putting out 5 shot-creating actions, 0.25 non-penalty expected goals and assists, 5 progressive carries, 11 goals and assists in 1,100 minutes. I'm probably not convinced, just the way Tottenham have done business, the youth they've been targeting, it would feel like a step away from that direction. However, they've signed successfully from Juventus in the past, in recent years as well, in Dejan Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur. Could they dip back into that market? And at the fee being quoted, if it ended up being £15 million, is it worth a stab in the dark? If you can get Chiesa back to those 2020 levels, then I think you're getting a bit of a bargain, but I'm just not convinced. Sorry, Chiesa, I'm not convinced you're ever going to get back to those levels. Southampton, I was going to do Ben Brereton Diaz, but they announced that transfer, so instead, we're going to do Matt O'Reilly. Now, you'll of course know Matt O'Reilly, the Celtic midfielder, from his unbelievable goal contribution and attacking output last season. 31 goal contributions in the Scottish League. Interestingly, he does qualify as homegrown. Of course, he's born in London. He played for Fulham, then he went to MK Dons and ended up at Celtic, didn't he? And he qualifies as Danish through, I think, his parents. But nevertheless, I mean, this would be a wow signing if they could pull it off. Do I see Southampton being able to pull a deal for Matt O'Reilly off? No, if I'm honest. I know they've got a history of signing players from Celtic, players like, Virgil van Dijk in the past. The current record sale, I think, from Celtic remains Jota to Saudi Arabia for about 29 million euros. Stepping back on that is Kieran Tierney, so it would probably have to be a record sale for Southampton to pick up a player like Matt O'Reilly. And we saw interest from Atletico Madrid in January, Atalanta so far this summer. These are teams ahead of where Southampton are. I think if he was to hold out, he could potentially pick up a big move to a Champions League club in January or next summer. Maybe even this summer, who knows? But Southampton, this is an incredibly punchy deal to try and get done. Forest, they're looking to dip back into the Brazilian market. Of course, they had massive success signing Murillo from Corinthians, didn't they, last summer? They're looking at another Corinthians player, according to reports, and that's Wesley. Now, it's fairly obvious Forest are going to try and add more depth on the wing. Callum Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Elanga, I suppose Morgan Gibbs-White can also play out there, although you kind of want him in the 10 space. Really exciting. But Callum Hudson-Odoi's injury record is pretty patchy. The loan move for Gio Reyna doesn't look like it's going to be made permanent. Fairly disastrous. So that's led Forest to look in more creative markets. Now, Wesley, of course, was close to going to Saudi Arabia for about £20 million. He's still very young, 19 years old. I hadn't seen loads of him play. I'm not going to lie to you and say I watched loads of Brazilian Serie A and saw him. But having looked at his numbers, having looked at some of his highlight packages, he is a classic Brazilian right winger. He wants to take people on. He's very physical in tight spaces. It would be an exciting move, but it would certainly be one for the future. Because I don't know enough about Wesley to comment really, I'm going to put him in the middle tier. Forest fans, let me know who you would like to sign on the wing. Let's go to Newcastle, who are closing in on the capture of Malik Thiaw. Look, this is an exciting signing. It's hard to dress it up any other way, isn't it? Of course, German international, but plays for AC Milan following that move from Schalke. Lots of minutes over the last couple of seasons. Still very young, still just 22 years old. Interestingly, when you think of AC Milan signing Thiaw in the first place, it was kind of the option they went for when they couldn't get Sven Botman. Now, he's not a replica of Botman, because of course Botman's left-footed, wants to play as a left-sided centre-back. Thiaw is a right-sided centre-back, right-footed, but he can play as both sides of the centre-back coin, really. What I believe you're looking at here is really the alternative to Tosin. Of course, they already got Lloyd Kelly through the door to cover Botman, his injury. They want a backup to Fabian Schär, a younger player that can push him for that starting role. That is going to be Malik Thiaw. What's very clear with Malik Thiaw is his physicality. At 6'4", he dominates his zone, but he's also exceptional on the ball. His progressive pass numbers are very high. His progressive carry numbers are very high. At times, it's rare, but he's operated in the defensive midfield role in Milan. I don't think you'll see that for Newcastle, but what that shows you is that he's very comfortable on the ball in a pressing situation. And what you would get if you got Thiaw is a 22-year-old, 24-year-old centre-back pairing with him and Botman that's massively physical, that's very comfortable on the ball, and were both signed for decent fees. This is a good move. To Manchester United, who are being linked, of course, with a right-back alternative to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and that is Mazraoui from Bayern Munich. Now, as I said earlier, don't have massive issues with the sale of Aaron Wan-Bissaka because of his contractual situation and the way he fits in this Erik ten Hag system. And I don't have massive issues with the Mazraoui signing either. The fee seems pretty realistic, 10 to 15 million pounds. Let's be honest, this feels like a backup to Diogo Dalot, somebody that Erik ten Hag knows and has worked with. We've seen that style of signing from Manchester United over the last few seasons. As a backup, I think it's a good move at that fee. what you know you're going to get from Mazraoui is exceptional on the ball ability. A player from the right back role, putting up nearly 7 progressive passes a game at an 80% pass completion rate. He's a great inverter. Probably his strongest point of his game is inverting from that right back zone into the defensive midfield position, as we saw at Ajax. What you don't love about this move is his injury record. You know, these numbers are not huge. Just once in his career, really, in his senior career, has he put up over 2,000 league minutes. Mainly that's because of his injury problems. And what you also don't get, that you got with a Wan-Bissaka, is that 1v1 defensive ability. It's probably his weakest point. If United need a right back to go head-to-head against one of the league's best wingers, I'm not sure Mazraoui will be the best option. But United have issues, and had issues last season, with fullback depth. If Aaron Wan-Bissaka leaves, Mazraoui, for me, is an absolutely fine replacement. Manchester City, I mean, they're not actually going to sign anyone by the looks of it at the moment. Savio's come through the door, but after him, Pep Guardiola's quotes midweek, pretty clear that he's happy with the squad he's got. Dani Olmo, very tenuous links. I don't think this one's going to happen. It feels like maybe Barcelona are still trying to make a move for him. Really talented player on the ball. He would potentially contribute where they have lost a player like Ilkay Gundogan in the last 18 months. I think they thought maybe Mateus Nunes could fill that void. Didn't really happen. They also brought in Mateo Kovacic, fills the void a little bit deeper. But they lose some of that creativity and goal-scoring output from midfield that Dani Olmo potentially could fill. Because his creative numbers are really, really strong in and around the box. As we saw at Euro 2024, technically, he's very, very sound. His off-the-ball numbers, pretty solid as well, coming from that RB Leipzig background. Presses very acutely. His tackle interception numbers remain high for a player in his position. Does he feel like a Man City signing? Not convinced about this one. Let's go to Liverpool, who are the only Premier League club not to sign a player, I think. Got to be one of the only clubs in Europe at this stage not to sign a player. Very few links, and one that popped up this week was Joey Veerman. Now, when I think of Joey Veerman at his absolute best playing in Europe, it's been almost as a number 10, playing further up the pitch. When I think of him at his worst, it's in defensive transition, where he doesn't look the quickest, doesn't look like he's got the physicality to cover large spaces. And I was hearing rumours that Liverpool were thinking about him as the 6th replacement should Endo go. I do not get it. In the attacking area, looks very creative, doesn't he? They are juiced, of course, because they're in the Eredivisie, and this isn't against the top 5 leagues. This is against the leagues that is outside the top 5 on FB Ref. So his numbers look fairly juiced, but it's off the ball number. I just do not get it as a 6. For me, it's an absolute nope. Leicester are up next, being linked with Ben Doak. Of course, he plays for Liverpool, the right winger, suffered that bad injury, I think around January, didn't he? That kept him out for quite a while. He's apparently being moved on this summer for playing time reasons, and this is going to be a loan. This is not going to be a permanent deal. Ben Doak has an extremely high ceiling, and I think Liverpool really, really rate him as a player. So if it's a loan to Leicester, does it make sense? At 18 years old, Ben Doak, for me, is almost a bit of a throwback in his dribbling style, certainly. He's very aggressive, that low centre of gravity, gets on the outside, not the most fluid, but it certainly is effective, and it has been at youth level. I agree he needs playing time, Ben Doak, but do I think Leicester is the best destination for that? Especially with the signing of Thiaw, the amount of minutes he put up last season and how effective he was at Leicester. 19 goal involvements in the Championship last season signals to me he's going to be a key player in that right wing slot. And if he's not, Bobby De Cordova-Reid has already been signed, can play in that right wing slot. I think it's a bit of a meh move. I think there are better options for Ben Doak to go on loan to in the Premier League or at a high level in the Championship. For Ipswich, who've got some great deals over the line so far, the links persist with Sammy Smodics. Of course, Championship top scorer last season, an amazing campaign for Blackburn, who finished 19th. To put up the numbers he was putting up in that Blackburn side, who was so mediocre from the position he plays, was astonishing. Now, Ipswich have reportedly had a £6 million bid rejected. Blackburn want over £20 million. Would I spend over £20 million on Sammy Smodics if I was Ipswich? And I think the answer is maybe not. You know, Chaplin is probably going to play in that 10 role. His output last season was pretty impressive. Is it going to be trusted to the same level this season? Remains to be seen. But with the signings of Amari Hutchinson, who can also play in that sort of 10 space, can't he? I'm not sure it's necessarily needed. I would probably double down on a player like Jack Clark, who can offer an alternative to Jadon Philogene, who fell through. He ended up going to Aston Villa, didn't he? Not totally convinced, if I'm honest. Let's go to Fulham, who have got a deal over the line for Emile Smith-Rowe. By the time you watch this, it may well have been announced, actually. And the reported fee is £34 million. That's £27 million plus £7 million in add-ons, which is a lot of money. And the reason I think it's a lot of money is this right here. From 2022 onwards, he's put up 4 Premier League starts, sub 600 minutes of Premier League football. And that is a risk, because the injury record has been spotty and the development at a key stage of his career between 21 and 23 years old, we haven't seen it. There is no doubt, though, that in 21-22, this season when he scored 10 goals, put up 21 starts, his fittest season of professional football, he looked really exciting. An absolute entertainer. A brilliant dribbler with the ball, which is certainly something Fulham look like they're going to miss, given that Willian doesn't seem to have signed a new contract at the club. So if Emile Smith-Rowe is the Willian replacement, potentially he's going to play on that left-hand side a little bit more, inverting inside like Willian used to do, it's probably a good move. It is an overpay, though. I do believe it's an overpay, but I still think there is a fabulous footballer in there. If they can get him fit, get him firing, he is such a brilliant footballer to watch, and Fulham could really have an exciting player on their hands. I just worry about the injuries. Let's go to Everton, and I was going to talk about Jake O'Brien, but that news got announced this week that the deal had been confirmed. I really like the signing, a Ben Godfrey replacement, good age, decent profile, despite the fact that Lyon put up one of the worst defensive performances of any team in France last season. I just trust Sean Dyche's opinion on centre-backs. But do I trust his opinion or Everton's opinion on the rumours surrounding Ricardo Rodriguez? Now, on the face of it, Everton potentially do need another left-back with the injury issues that have developed there. However, what I think people are missing with Ricardo Rodriguez is they are thinking of Ricardo Rodriguez of 4 or 5 years ago. This is not Ricardo Rodriguez of 27 years old. This is 31-year-old Ricardo Rodriguez, who has really been operating, if we're honest, as a left-sided centre-back for Torino. Yes, he was a very consistent performer for the club. You know, they finished 9th, but they put up the 4th best defensive record of any Serie A team last season. However, in people's mind, they still think left-back, potentially even a left wing-back if Dyche wants to go to a 3 at the back. That's not Ricardo Rodriguez anymore. Ricardo Rodriguez now started 32 games in a back 3 in the centre-back role, the left-sided centre-back role. Do I see that happening under Sean Dyche? Absolutely not. He's 5'11". He's never played in the Premier League. He's a free transfer, yes, but these numbers are not Sean Dyche numbers. His aerial duel win rate, his ground duel win rate are not Sean Dyche centre-back numbers. Maybe Dyche is going to sign him and play him back where he used to play, as a left-back. But in my opinion, as we stand today, nope. Next up, we've got Crystal Palace's signing of Ismaila Sarr. By the time you watch this one might well and probably has been made official. My thoughts on this one, though, are it's a bit... At 26 years old, it feels like he's probably being brought in as the Elise replacement. They're hoping that maybe him and Kamada's output can cover Elise's output. But we haven't really seen it from Ismaila Sarr in the Premier League or Ligue 1. What we saw at Watford were fits and starts, massive high ceiling moments. I think back to the game against Liverpool, some individual star quality. But the output was never quite there. When he dropped down to the Championship, it appeared. When he got more minutes, it appeared. When he came back up to the Premier League again, didn't quite work. In Ligue 1, hasn't quite worked. So I think Crystal Palace here have really taken an educated gamble. A decent fee at 16 million euros, not a massive risk, and therefore he might work out. But do I think Ismaila Sarr is going to be able to cover the output that we saw from Michael Elise last season? I would be surprised. I might be proven wrong. Okay, let's go to Chelsea and Victor Osimhen, the transfer that's reared its ugly head yet again. This one really picking up a bit of momentum this week amongst moves involving Romelu Lukaku going in the opposite direction. Now, David Ornstein came out with this story first, didn't he? Fabrizio Romano has backed it up, but Osimhen's agent has kind of poo-pooed it a little bit. Nevertheless, let's talk about it as if it was a realistic deal. Now, there's no doubt Chelsea would be getting the better end of it, even if they move Lukaku to Napoli for 30 million euros and sign Osimhen for 70 million euros, that would be a wow transfer. His numbers last season took a little bit of a fallback, didn't they? 15 goals, 3 assists, but he started just 22 games. AFCON affected him, and when you look at his general shot numbers, still extremely high, in the 4 range. He gets shots off from exceptional areas. His non-penalty XG continues to be high despite injury problems and despite inconsistency in his selection with Napoli. And that for me is the biggest risk here for Chelsea, right? His inconsistency in selection because of injury. Only very rarely does he scrape past 2,000 league minutes. Hasn't put up more than once 30 league starts in a single season, despite the fact he's now, 25 years old? So it's a slight risk, but his goal-scoring numbers have remained consistent throughout his career. He is an absolute machine athletically in the box at getting shots off from good areas, in the right position, great in the air. There's no doubt he would be one of the league's best strikers. If they could get the deal done for 70 million euros, what is that, 57, 58 million pounds plus Lukaku, it's amazing business. Let's go to Brighton, who I think have had a bit of an L this week, losing Pascal Gross. For me, the Premier League's most underrated player across the last 5 seasons, of course, joining Borussia Dortmund for 7 million euros. So there's a hole in midfield with his exit. They've partially filled that with Max Wiefer. And of course, they've brought in Yalkoite. He can play alongside Hinshelwood. He can play alongside Milner. Obviously, Baleba is in there as well, as is Billy Gilmore, though it looks like he might also leave the club for Napoli. So because of this, Brighton are reportedly in talks with 21-year-old Inter Miami midfielder Diego Gomez. Now, at 14 million euros, that would make him Inter Miami's record sale. I think it would make him the 5th most expensive Paraguayan of all time, and there is a lot to like about his game. First and foremost, he is really all action. He is a bit of a press leader, but also a good chance creator. Gets shots off from good areas. His non-penalty expected goals and assist numbers are still in the 0.25 range. As you can see here, drives the ball past people really, really nicely. And off the ball can offer cover. A midfield of him, Wiefer and Baleba is extremely physical. And to be honest with you, Brighton's recruitment, it kind of just makes me want to bump him to good move, even without having seen a bunch of him. I've looked into his numbers, I've read a few scout reports, and I've watched some clips of him online. I'm just going to trust the Brighton boys. Brentford, not a bunch of links, and I'm surprised we're not seeing more striker chat, given that Tony could leave, and Igor Thiaw seemingly has injured his meniscus again. 2 knee injuries in about 6 months. This one means he could be out for a number of weeks, if not months. Now, the most common link I could find was with Pontus Almqvist. He was, of course, on loan at Lecce last season. He's a right winger, left-footed. When you watch him, almost a little bit reminiscent, probably because of the hair, as harsh as it is, of Mudryk. Quite a low centre of gravity, very dynamic in his body movements, but his output pretty mediocre last year. As you can see, 2 goals, 1 assist in 30 appearances. His numbers were a bit of a struggle, but Lecce as a group were a bit of a struggle last season. As we stand here today, I'm giving it a bit of a meh. Let's go to Bournemouth and another deal that has probably been announced by the time you watch this. It is Dean Howson, of course, the Juventus starlet. Juventus have done some business this summer that leaves me with question marks. They've sold a lot of talented youngsters. They really, really have. You think of Sule going, Illing Jr. going, Baranchea going, Howson going. But for Bournemouth, I kind of do love it. Zabani and Senesi are going to be the starting centre-backs, but Howson offers great cover in there. He offers them an option to go to about 3 if they somehow decided to do that. Lloyd Kelly leaving means there is a potential space there. There are minutes. It's a young, dynamic team. Iraola is one of the best coaches in the league. If I was Howson, I'd be thinking this is a fantastic opportunity. Look at how far Zabani and Kirkes have come in their development since Iraola's got his hands on them. I could go to a new level. Because last season he was all right at Roma. He wasn't exceptional, but he wasn't terrible either. Physically, it's going to take a bit of time, I believe, to get used to the Premier League because he is still quite slight. But at 15 million euros, This is a good move. Okay, the final two names, two of the biggest names on this list, really. Joao Felix, let's start with him, to Aston Villa. I think people forget with Felix that he's still just 24 years old. Like, he's been playing football for so long at such a high elite level since that massive move from Benfica that the spotlight burns really strong. And look, it's not going to work at Atletico Madrid. He's fallen out too many times with Diego Simeone. It didn't really work at Barcelona, and it feels like he needs a fresh start. And you know what? I actually think Aston Villa would be a pretty good fresh start for him. I certainly think it would be better than some of the other options I'm seeing mooted. His numbers in terms of his output still haven't quite hit the heights people wanted to, which means his fee could be significantly lower than they've been quoted in the past. And with Moussa Diaby leaving the club, is there a little bit more room in that 10 space where we kind of saw Moussa Diaby operating last season for a player like Joao Felix? I look at the 10 options they've got. McGinn could play that more advanced role, couldn't he? Jacob Ramsey can play that more advanced role. I suppose Morgan Rogers could come in off the touchline and play that more advanced role. Zaniolo was there last season and put up 800 minutes on loan. So there is potentially a little bit of a slot. I know that Jaden Philogene has come in and can operate wide. Maybe that means Leon Bailey is going to play slightly more central. But Joao Felix would be a massive statement signing if you could get him on loan with an option or an obligation to buy. Unai Emery, I seriously believe, would be one of the best coaches he's worked with and would improve him, no doubt about that. Even when he was at Chelsea, there were little glimpses of brilliance. There really were, and I think that could take Aston Villa to the next level. And for Joao Felix himself, I still believe there is a player to be improved there. Technically, he's still very, very sound. Does he fit in the way Unai Emery wants to play? Ostensibly, no. But maybe there is an adaptation going on with Unai Emery to go to the next level. Maybe he thinks he can adapt Joao Felix to fit his game. On loan with an option obligation, this for me would almost be a wow. Like, it's almost that punchy. Before we get on to the biggest signing that Arsenal have been linked with, Leroy Sane, let's talk about the latest signing. The one that appears to be pretty close to happening, actually, Mikel Merino. Now, Premier League fans might well remember him from his Newcastle days when he was playing in that defensive midfield position. This is a very interesting signing because it feels like quite a cut price fee. Very well-rounded profile. Presumably, he's going to play alongside Declan Rice, almost in that Jorginho mould, but slightly more physical, slightly better off the ball than Jorginho is. And on the ball, very composed, exactly what you would expect from a Spanish midfielder. Arsenal fans, I think this is a really, really smart bit of business. More depth in the midfield area, a position you definitely needed. Let me know what you think about it. Let's talk Sane. This rumour has picked up a little bit of pace, still feels slightly unrealistic to me, but let's imagine it's going to happen. First and foremost, his output across the second half of the season, Leroy Sane, really not good enough last season. 1 goal from November onwards. He started the season on fire. And let's not mess around, that fire is still in there somewhere. When you watch Leroy Sane in individual moments, there is still an excellent player there. I don't think he was helped particularly last season by the managerial situation or what was going on around Bayern Munich. For me, he's still one of the best wingers in the world in moments. I think specifically to the Champions League, and a lot of games in the knockout rounds, quarterfinals onwards, are generally won by just superstar individual ability. Something happening from nothing. And that's kind of what I associate Leroy Sane with. So when you combine that with his ferocious underlying numbers, the fact he's still only 28 years old, he's got a really strong working relationship with Arteta from his Manchester City days, it's hard to deny this would be a wow signing. It would be amazing. Like, it would be a risk, but it would be, straight away, your first thought is, wow. Okay, so that was my tier list this week. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button.